Are you feeling torn between homeschooling your kids and keeping your family's income? Or maybe you're wondering how to guide your child's learning without having all the answers? If that sounds like you are definitely in the right place. Welcome to the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast, where homeschool dreams really meet real-world support. I'm Tiffany Hernandez, here to help you connect with the tools, community, and business strategies to homeschool confidently and keep your family's income strong. If you're ready to lead, learn, and launch, let's get started. Welcome back. It's the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Hernandez. Today, we have one of our authors from a new book we are publishing. It's coming out in August, called Unleashed, Education Unleashed. And today we have Sean Bennett with us from Isla Academy. He is the founder and director, coming all the way from across the world. Welcome, Sean. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Tiffany. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Good to see you too. You joined the book. Your story is so inspiring, and I can't wait to dive into this. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the book a little bit later in the show, but I really want you to share with our audience how you got started in this. I know you shared a little bit on another podcast. We'll be sharing that shortly as well, but what are your thoughts on everything you've created? Can you give everybody an idea of how this all started?
Sure. I graduated university and I went to study to be a kindergarten teacher. But while I was in college, I became a teen counselor. And so my experience was very diverse. I ended up, after several years of counseling, traveling abroad and doing some international teaching. And after many years of studying or teaching in Asia, then leading a school project in Tanzania, I had this opportunity to follow a school director to the Dominican Republic and assist him in starting a gifted and talented public school. And while here, the idea was to start my own project at some point. And I guess when I got here, I was, I don't know, I had such a varied and interesting educational experience, or my experiences were so rare, being in Asia, being in Africa, being a counselor, being a kindergarten teacher, that I was somewhat shocked when I started doing my research around the country. I'm in the Dominican Republic, and looking at the schools that existed, because many of them seemed like schools that I went to when I was a kid. They seemed very traditional, for lack of a better word, outdated. But also there were so many things happening in education that I had personally seen that were just not taking place here. And I thought, we can do this here. I mean, this does seem like a place where people are eager for something new. And so I found the first location for Isla was in a town called Cabarete. And Cabarete, Dominican Republic, is on the north coast. It's a kite surfing, very diverse. It's a kite surfing sort of capital of the world. It's very diverse. There's people from all over the world living there, huge expat population. And I noticed very quickly that there were so many forward-thinking people, so many people thinking about a different work style, a different lifestyle. This is back 10 years ago. But their kids were sitting in rooms that felt like something from the 90s. And so I felt like there's this major gap here, and it's what I know best. So I opened up this school, initially with the idea of just serving the homeschooling families that were in the area that did not attend those other schools. So we kind of called ourselves a homeschool. We had a preschool. We offered some opportunities for parents to come in with their young children. We did some after-school programs. And very quickly, I realized that I had taken on something that was much bigger than I had anticipated. I didn't really have in my tool set this plan for what to do when kids of all ages showed up. And so that was the first challenge, is to say, what do we do here when there are 7-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 12-year-olds, and they're all in the same space? And oh, guess what? You don't have any other teachers. You don't really have that many other resources. What do you do? So we kind of went, I had kept hearing this term traditional school, that we were not a traditional school. But in fact, I kind of dove headfirst into the real idea of traditional school, which was that we were going to create almost like a one-room schoolhouse. And while I was eventually able to split the school up into a preschool and an upper group, what ended up happening was that I realized with all of these different kids of all of these different abilities, all of these different age levels, that I could not teach them content, right? So I could take some of this stuff that I wanted to bring from my experience, project-based learning, integrated tech, but I had to figure out a way to make sure that I was teaching the children how to learn and not just giving them content. It wouldn't work. So there I was, and I think many micro school owners might resonate with this. You think you have this idea for what your school is going to be, but ultimately what I think the best form of this education is when you're building it around the students. And I had no other choice. I had these kids, and if I was going to survive as an institution or as a business, I had to create a space that they wanted to come to, like so opposite from most schools. And so I dug into what they loved. And if I had one kid who was into Minecraft, then we built a project around that. If I had one kid who was interested in languages, then we built projects around that. And I found myself just bouncing from kid to kid, trying to help them build their own ideas, their own projects, dive in. And it just became like so popular. I think where the chapter of the book comes is that it became so popular, this idea that we went from 12 or 14 kids up to 86 kids in the second year. But the weird thing about that was that so many of those families that joined in the second year had participated with us in very small ways. Maybe they had come to an after school session with me. Maybe they had done some tutoring. And so they had experienced the vibe, I guess, and the culture of what Isla was. And that's what they wanted. And I then quickly had to figure out okay, well then how do we keep that culture going when I'm not the one who's doing the teaching? And I really, in that first year, as much as I'd love to say that I had it all mapped out and that I really had this clear system, I was very much building the boat as it was going down the river. So there was a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation, a lot of this, a lot of that, a lot of mornings waking up and wondering what are we doing today? Let me figure something out. And how do you create a system in which 6, 7 other teachers are then going to be able to follow that and make those same types of choices? That was a big challenge.
So you said so many different things here that I think a lot of micro school founders and homeschool families all alike can resonate with. And that is, you were figuring it out as you go. You didn't know
Mm-hmm.
everything that you needed to know. And then it's we are focused solely on the child. One thing that you said too was that your community was open-minded to new opportunities. We're now seeing that in the United States, but it's been very challenging to get there and to get that momentum of hey, this system is a slow-moving train that's going nowhere. How can we fix this? How can we update this? How can we get it to a place where we feel good about it, where we're excited about what we're learning about the innovations? One-room schoolhouses are popping up everywhere. You are so through on the culture and how do you grow that thing. And I know you mentioned okay, I had to figure out what I'm doing. You didn't share too much of that, but can you give us a little bit of snippet of maybe some instances where I had to figure these things out? And then because I feel like a lot of the micro school founders
Okay.
are I'm struggling alone and I'm trying to make this thing work, but I also have an idea in my head and it's not coming out exactly how I had planned. Where is the disconnect? How do I make it work? Where do I find the solutions?
Well, I would say that I didn't invent anything. That's a pretty important point. I think that what I noticed in the homeschooling community, and at least the ones that were coming to my school in the beginning, was that these were not necessarily families who were choosing to homeschool for many of the reasons that maybe where I'm from state of Georgia, many reasons, many people there might have done it for religious reasons, or, there's a stay-at-home mom. That's not really why people were doing it. I was getting families that were actually quite excited about the opportunities that were afforded them via homeschooling. And they weren't signing up. This is another, I guess, like confusion that I had when I opened up to be this homeschooling place. I thought I was going to get a lot of kids to show up that were, they were already enrolled in some program, and I was just going to walk around as they raised their hand and had questions as they were doing their, their forest trails or the Laurel Springs or something like that. And that's not what was happening. It was this excitement of people creating this like a la carte type of educational system. And that's when I really like understood that a lot of these homeschooling programs, and a lot of schools, for example, are great in certain things. Like they can be really good in math, or they have a great literature program, but it just doesn't work the other way. And a lot of kids, when they sign up to these programs, they're stuck in this one way. So I said, no, I mean, if it's possible to create a world where we take, hey, the best math program and we'll do it this way, and then we take a best way to do inquiry, we're going to do it this way. Why wouldn't we be able to do that? Like, who is telling us that this school has to provide all of those things? And so I was looking at models and systems that were already working, but just weren't existing in our community. So like, for example, I mean, there's a lot of aspects of, I would say, Montessori that exist in our program where we were giving students choice. We were mixing grade levels. I mean, that was by not by choice, but
necessity.
Yeah, necessity. But a big one, like I think probably one of the biggest key choices was that the first hire was a friend of mine that I taught with in Asia, and he agreed to come over with me, Franco Rodriguez. And he had a lot of experience working in IB schools. And so I was like enamored with the organization that they had. But we were not in a situation where we could become an IB World School. We would need years to go through the training and the protocol and all that. So I really tried to look at that as almost a skeleton for what we did. And so some of the aspects that we use there to kind of hold us all together, and they're the things that I believe are why we're still in existence, are things like creating consistent units of investigation. And so every kid, doesn't matter how old they are, doesn't matter what grade they're in, everybody's working on a similar cycle of inquiry, meaning in the first week, we start with the unit, we start with the hook, we hook everyone in, we pre-assess, we figure out what they want to know, what they already know, and then we move through the unit. Even if it's a high school chemistry unit versus a kindergarten unit on insects, we're still running through a similar 6-week cycle, and that united everyone. That gave me, for all of the talk that I said about being all over the place and sometimes planning and trying to figure out where I was, my mind needed structure. And it's wild because the word structure is such I like a trigger, I think, sometimes for me, because a lot of people see structure as this thing where you're following the book, everyone's on the page, you're going this way and this way and this way, then you go to the next class. I'll hear parents say like that's something that they think that they need. And what they don't realize is all of the immense structure behind the scenes that it takes to create educational freedom for students, to create student choice. So I have really, really leaned into that. Like if you ask me right now, what is your school doing on, April 2nd, next year, I'll look at the calendar. I'll find out what number unit it is. I'll find out what week of that unit it is. I'll find out what day of that unit it is. And while I won't be able to pinpoint any page number because our students are all doing different things, there are goals that our entire school will be sharing. And when everyone shares a goal, again, whether it's elementary or secondary, it fosters all of these opportunities for collaboration. Like in our early days as a school, when we had kids of all these ages, if I wasn't sitting there working with the kindergarten teacher, I would have felt very alone. But the way that we were able to kind of marry those worlds together really made me feel like, okay, there's something here. And it gave this unity as well to the students and the school and even the families to kind of get this routine going,
Right.
this cycle where everyone felt like they were on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that you are talking about structure in this manner because I think a lot of micro schools and unschooling tend to want to go completely off of a structure at all. I do feel like there needs to be balance and you can have harmony with structure, but it might not look the same in every micro school because of how you need to adjust per each student. So, you mentioned that the students that you were having come in, they might all be on different points and inquiry states. How, like, as the teacher,
Hmm.
because I think a lot of people are still trying, families and micro school founders are like, okay, but how do you let them be on their own level, but still in the same boat?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So, first of all, every day, no matter what the levels are, I mean, we do love certain aspects of school. We love certain parts of having our children in classes with other friends. I mean, I think that's why people are choosing this micro school idea, is that they don't necessarily want their kid just at home by themselves, right? They want them to enjoy some of those great benefits, right? So we start every day with a morning meeting. And that morning meeting is about creating community. It's about creating expectation, routine, reminders, because we are actually like the group of students that are there, whether it's 6 kids in your school or, 26, however many it is, you are there together. And there's a lot of conversation that needs to be talked about to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So that's how we start every day as an entire school. We all do that. And then after we do that, I mean, I kind of leaned back on my kindergarten training. I didn't leave the kindergarten training behind when I was working with older students. Like when I lived in
Yes.
Asia, I was teaching university students in English. And I was like, I'm going to set up my room with learning stations and small groups because I was realizing I have a lot of different levels in here and I can't teach all of them at the same time. I don't want to be standing in front of all of this group and trying to explain. So that's the same thing we do at Isla. We evaluate our students in the very beginning of the year and try to create these groups that I like to maybe compare to like a group of people that you might work out with. They don't have to be exactly the same strength or speed as you, but it makes a lot more sense for you to work out with someone that you don't have to take off or put on a lot of weight every time you're switching back and forth. So we would create those groups, and I did that in kindergarten. I would set up 4 reading groups, and I would have them come back to my reading table. We do the same thing in reading, writing, and in math, and so that allows us to kind
Mhm.
of make sure that everybody's getting direct instruction, but they're getting it at their level. And we utilized a lot of the tools that had been, I mean, really introduced. This was 2015 when we started. So pre 2015, there was a lot of stuff just popping off
Oh, yeah.
that were not quite in the school system yet, but they were amazing. Like places where you could get leveled reading texts or math programs where it was responsive to your answer. So if you got the question correct, it would give you something a little more difficult, and a question wrong. And not only that, like when you think about the chaos, I guess, of having 15 different levels in a room, one of the things that teachers would fear is, how am I going to assign 15 different things, grade 15 different things, tell everybody? But a lot of these programs will do a lot of that for you, right? They will check the answer. They will allow the kid not to sit there and wait until they know what to do next. So a lot of my whole class instruction is about how to use programs independently, how to work in a learning station without me, how to, I don't know, for example, take some of the questions that we might have related to our unit of investigation, and how to, you and a partner, sit over there and discuss those in a way that is beneficial to you and also something that I can check and account for. So every single activity that I set up that is independent is also set up with the forethought that this must be something my students can do without me, and that most of my time is not going to be spent in front of the group. Most of my time is actually going to be spent either in these targeted groups, small groups, or individual check-ins. So, I mean, another thing that's pretty like a hallmark or characteristic of Isla is that we don't have teacher desks because we don't have a need for them. It's not like we put the assignment on the board, hand everyone the worksheet, and then sit back there and wait. You know, we are using every opportunity that we have to do the same type of stuff you might do with your own child in the home. It's really direct and targeted. And you can only work with kids in small groups or in targeted fashion if they know how to be without you. And so a mistake that I often see is that there will be maybe a great activity, maybe something really beneficial for the kids, but it's either too complex or it hasn't been properly introduced. It's not routine enough. The instructions are a little bit complex for them to understand. And so what happens? Every kid's raising their hand. Miss Tiffany, Mr. Sean, what do I do next? How do I do this? You know, you function in that way. One analogy that I often make is like, imagine the teacher as a personal trainer and imagine your classroom as a gym. And every student in there has different fitness goals, right? And you kind of recognize that, you get to know them, you hold them accountable, you check in with them, but you don't need to see them working out all the time. You're happy if they're exercising. And if the people who come into your gym don't know how to use those weights or those machines properly, then they don't function at all, right? If there is a machine, let's say the bench press, where you got to really be over there and they're doing some heavy lifting, you have to be there. And so you design your room in such a way that you're there for those moments, and for the other moments, the students are capable. And that does take a lot of setup to get going. And another thing that we do is project-based learning. So in addition to, you know, that very similar idea of a kindergarten classroom where students are able to work independently, they're able to exercise their skills, and then they're getting targeted instruction with a teacher on reading, writing, and math. For our science and social studies units, we do project-based learning, and we integrate like these core skills. So our students are learning practical skills in addition to the content. And by having the time to work with students to design projects that are based on their questions and their interest, while that does take some upfront time in a unit, once a kid is deep into their idea and their project, and once you use some of the structures that we have around sequencing a project so that you can use common language even if one kid's doing something totally different than another, kids are very engaged, right? Like, they're very engaged. And after we do all of our small groups in the morning, once we do those reading groups, for example, or those writing groups, the teacher is free to connect. And like, for me, that was always my favorite part of teaching, was those moments where I'm with that kid, like in direct connection and really dealing with what they need. And I think it's why you'll hear so many parents say, well, I started homeschooling my child, and it turns out we were able to do the entire curriculum in like 3 months or only 2 hours a day. And that's true because you're getting really targeted instruction. A lot of school is not that, you know, it is, you know, movement and waiting.
Yeah.
So if you have to really like, I just got lucky because I almost on a whim said we would be a homeschool style center. And if kids had shown up with homeschooling programs, I don't know where we would be now. But because they all showed up totally looking for a complete a la carte experience, like, it caused me to build this school in the same way that I would build it if I had 12 or 14 kids of my own, I guess.
Yeah, I would say with the way that you've built the school, you've almost had to be innovative in spite of what you had planned, right? And these programs, we've done them. I've done the full all-in-one curriculums, and they're very good in some instances, and in others, my child was like, I don't get it. I don't want to do it. It's not my thing. So then we went to more of an unschooling approach where, okay, we're going to have an eclectic style of picking up a little bit of this, picking up a little bit of that, taking the best pieces and putting them together. But here's where the kicker comes in. A lot of these families, yes, I don't want my child only at home. She's a social butterfly. She doesn't want to be at home by herself. She wants to be with her friends, where she should be. And we've also lost such that connection from just being online. Granted, online is great. You know, it's given us a lot of opportunity with Zoom and all these opportunities to get together, but it is not the same as in-person interaction. And that's been my biggest thing coming into the homeschooling world is just building community because there's more that can be done in community than that can be done alone. You still get the targeted,
Right.
like you're saying, but building that structure to have everybody moving along the same track, but not in the same direction, it takes some time and planning. And you've been doing this now for a decade. Can you share just a little bit about the movement through the years of, we kind of got this going and then, we started implementing this because I know you've grown quite a bit and now you have more than one location, which is the goal. And it's really to not only build legacy, but it's to build that impact in multiple communities because you see the benefit that the kids are having and we want to present that for more.
Yeah, I we have three campuses now, and I would say in the beginning, I created a fake, I guess the word would be false level of expectation for myself. Like I remember before we opened the school, it was the summer before, and I was telling someone, like a friend of a family or something like that, and they said, "Well, how many kids do you hope that you'll have?" And I said this number, like, "Well, if we ever get 80, like that would be unbelievable." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do if 100 people show up? Are you going to reject them?" And I hadn't even considered the possibility that more people would want to come. I was like really trying to lower that. So what happened is they did come, right? They did end up coming, and it happens really fast. I mean, our school blew up, and in such a way that when we had all of these age levels as well, I really felt like, okay, well, this is going to be cool for our existing kids. They're going to have friends. They've been here this first year with 12 kids or so, and now they're going to now they're the popular place, and everyone wants to come there. So I kept saying yes, and there's this opportunity to give these great teachers a job, and it just felt like it really felt awesome. And then I found myself like, oh no, it turns out, and I think probably some micro school founders will realize this, it turns out like financially, it's probably better to stay with one or two teachers and have 25 kids than it is to become this, multi-grade 8 classroom place. You have to invest all of this stuff. And not only that, like once you do that, you really have to hold on to it. And that's really what I felt in year 2 and year 3 is, wow, we grew. I better hang on to this because this wave will
Pressure.
go backwards just as soon as it gets forward. Oh yeah. And we lived in a town. I mean, the first campus here and all of the campuses of Isla are in these, I mean, very transient, they're tourist type of towns. People live there for 2 or 3 years. It's not like you have this base of people that you can count on being there forever. When you're a small school, you could have, and this did happen to us, I think, in our third year, and you could have 3 families of 3 love your school, but all have to move for various family
Reasons.
emergencies or reasons. And so that can be 10% of your campus. So what I found myself doing was, I think our growth also led to this popularity that brought people that weren't necessarily, like, I don't know, they hadn't done their research. Maybe they just wanted their kids around all of their other friends, and they heard it was a great place, and they came in, and I felt like I had to hang on to these people. Like if I didn't hang on to them, we would cease to exist. If we went from 86 to 52, I mean, what was I going to do? Fire people? I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
So a big mistake I made early on, and something that I see like all the time when I watch other schools start up is I just started compromising. I just did whatever it took. Like someone would say, well, I don't think you should integrate social studies and literature. Okay, great. So we'll get a second teacher for that. I don't think you should use as much tech. Okay, great. Then we'll go back from that and we'll try to integrate these textbooks. I don't think you should have as many students in these classrooms. So I'll change that. I think you need I think you need an arts person, and I think now you need a music person. And we got so big that there was almost this expectation that we would have all of the trappings of a non-micro school. And if I really thought that it was necessary to hang on, I did it. I just kept doing it. I just kept saying, okay, okay, okay. I mean, even not only with families, but sometimes with teachers, right? Because at that point now you've got a lot of teachers who are not all necessarily fully bought into your system. And so some of them would say, hey, instead of the 6-week units, I think it would be better if we did 9-week units. And then another one said, I think this unit would be better if we did 4. So I found myself in year 4, like, I mean, we were all over the place, to be
Yeah,
honest. We
drifting
were,
like the winds.
oh yeah. And believe it or not, like the thing that probably saved us, and I think has also probably transformed this movement of microschooling, was the is, I mean, everyone went home and everyone sat in their house, and we lost everyone, like everyone. That fear that I had that we would go backwards and our enrollment would lower and that we wouldn't be able to pay the bills, well, it became a reality. No one signed up in the summer of 2020 for the next year. And we had to build. I was noticing these pods forming. I was paying attention to what was going on. I was
Right.
noticing like this really like the reemergence of this micro school movement where it's like, hey, there's a teacher with 8 kids in my neighborhood. There's a teacher with 12. And I knew that at any point our school could close down anyways, but we rolled the dice and we took it way back to day one. And we took back our original style, our original system, all the compromises we had made. We got rid of them. And like what I noticed in our families, especially our new families, was that 6 months of sitting next to their kid in the kitchen, watching them do whatever it is they were doing on their Zoom calls or whatever with their school had really opened their mind to what should be happening in education. And all of
Right.
a sudden, Isla Academy, which was this pretty new school, post pandemic, we were like, oh, you guys are the old ones. You guys have been doing it for a long time. And there were not the questions of structure. There were not the questions of credibility. What we were doing didn't seem avant garde or anything like that. And it gave us this, I guess, legitimacy to really push these ideas
That you started
with
with.
the
Yeah.
support of our community. Yeah. And so right around that time, we opened up a second campus for similar reasons. That town, a little bit smaller than the town we were in originally, just it couldn't support 3 or 4 schools of 50. And so they all started to crumble. There was no real connection. It was such a diverse group. There was a Montessori school, there was an English language school, a French school, and everything was just not working. So we were able to come in there as well and start in the same way. Have a school with 22 kids in the first year. Have it with only 3 classrooms. Let it grow organically. If you're a 16-year-old kid, you could show up. If you're a 4-year-old kid, you could show up. If you just moved into town in December, you could hop right in to our program. And that really also, I think, bolstered our legitimacy. And the thing that it did mostly was that it forced us to come to terms with what are the essential elements of
Mm.
an Isla Academy. Really, initially, I had in my head that the families in this second location, well, they had come and visited our first location, so they wanted that exactly.
Of course.
But then when you go to the second location, it's different kids and it's different classrooms and there are different resources. I mean, we didn't have the ability to have exactly everything exactly the same. So my attempts to, I don't know, McDonaldize the second campus were another, they were another lesson in that if our goal ever is to have this whole education thing figured out and so tight that it's like in a binder and you can just do it this way perfectly, then we're not moving with the times, and we're not really being, we're just going to become old and get left behind. So I had to really take a long look at what are the elements from Isla Cabarete that must be in Isla Las Trenas, and what are the elements that absolutely I cannot try to force there. We have to take advantage of the staff that are there. If we have someone who's a great artist, we're going to lean into that. If we have someone who's a great science, we're going to lean into that, and we'll be able to take advantage of the people that we have in the same way that I think a lot of unschooling families
Yeah.
do, right? Like, I think in talking to a lot of families who do this, there can be a tendency to lean back on your own strengths, right? And
Oh, yeah.
direct kids things that you're all also interested in or that you're also knowledgeable in. And
Right.
it's okay. It can be okay, but like if there's not something behind that that says what are the essentials, then you can find yourself running out of, like, I guess, creative capital, where you start to run out of ideas and wonder like how far out can I go with this, and am I giving my child every experience that I want to be able to give them.
Yeah. We have noticed that too, just being more fluid and more within the unschooling side. I say we're almost unschoolers because we still do some curriculum. We still have some independent directive learning, but the culture, even within several different homeschooling co-ops in our area, are so different. They're so diverse. Even within, our very rural towns, not every group is for everybody. And just what we had in one group cannot be duplicated. I had my own fair share of adding classes and adding groups, and they do not look anything alike. Even though the model of learning is very similar, there are slight changes that I've encountered because of the age bracket of what we're doing and the focus. However, the people really do dictate how class happens. Okay, these parents are much more lenient with things. They want a more fluid environment. They're not so focused on structure. Learning is great, but they want their kids to have life skills, and that's what they want. This other group over here is like, no, we want to have more class structure. We want to have, you've got to take that into
Mm-hmm.
consideration. And
Yep.
it's not going to be the same in every school, even if it's in the same town. The culture really gets dictated by where its surroundings are, which brings us to a whole nother part, because you are also helping to start and launch other programs with this same
Right.
mentality. Can you share a little bit about where that's at? Because I know you're super excited about getting this
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. So I and I really can't believe it, but I always felt like the young school director, and that, you know, I was just figuring it out. And then 10 years later, starting to realize not only have I run this one campus for 10 years, the other for 6. So it's like, oh, we have had a lot of mistakes, and we've had a lot of really interesting revelations or whatever. And there were teachers and school owners that were coming to me and asking for advice on this. And I could see them right where I was. Like I remember going and visiting the campus that became our first affiliate and saying, "Oh man, this is us to a T." And this school director is doing everything that I was doing myself, right? Because she cares so much about the community and she cares so much about holding it together. And there's all of this, you know, doubt within people's mind because people love their
Yes.
kids so much, right? Like,
Yes.
I think, why does someone choose a school, right? You think it's because, oh, this philosophy or that philosophy, but I think a lot of times people are really choosing it because they want to feel like a good parent. Like, I want to feel like a good parent. And if I put my child in that space, in that environment with those teachers or whatever, I feel good. And anytime there's the doubt that creeps in that they're not doing it right, they don't know what to do. And I'll tell you that, like, particularly in places like the Dominican Republic or other places where there's a large population of people that are, they're far away from their hometown, they're often having to tell their families why they did this. Why did you move abroad? Or why are you doing this type of school? Or what are you talking about? What about the kids? And their ability
Yes.
to articulate what's going on is very challenging because it doesn't look like the type of school that they went to, right? Sometimes intentionally so. And I think Isla has probably done a good job in, like, being a bit of a bridge there. It's like we are fully bought into unschooling philosophy, but also I know you need a report card. I got you, and I know that you want to call these classes subjects. And so we got it. And making sure that we incorporate that in such a way that everyone feels like, okay, I get it. I get what's happening. And in launching, well, we didn't launch the affiliate school. We found a micro school that was right there in the space we were, that was kind of spinning wheels. And we were able to come in and say, look, there's a much easier way. Like, I remember going into the office and watching a curriculum developer there. I mean, just doing everything and thinking, hey, we got this. Like, we have 16 years worth of units built for you. Don't worry. Right. And they are built not just for one school, but they're built for multiple schools. So I know that they flow, and they're not just built for Dominican Republic or 16-year-olds. They're built for a broad range of ages. I had to build these in such a way that they could be adaptable. I knew how to come up with grading systems. I had dealt with challenges of discipline and behavior, challenges with hiring or setting up a classroom, all of the basics, that to me felt like, okay, I got this now. I've gone through all of the iterations that could possibly happen. And let me just put this down on paper and put this into a course and in a video series, and then come in and give you this. And then not try to tell you as a school how you have to do it. It's not like we are going in there and doing these audits where we're going to check on them and want to see if they're doing it the Isla way. And no, it was like we wanted to be supportive of them, and we wanted to give them all. Yeah, like, also, I think what was most helpful there was, as they were in that space where their families were starting to go, it's been a great ride, but do we need to choose something because our kids are getting older? Can you really serve these kids as they get into high school or what have you? There's a real challenge in alternative forms of education in being able to provide legitimacy, because you just don't have, in the early days, you don't have a graduate. You don't have, what are you supposed to say there? So I was able to go in and give a presentation to families and say, these are not only stories of graduates, right? But these are stories of students who are years beyond graduation, right? And here's some of their testimonials. And here is, what they found out when they left this little bubble of an expat village here on the beach, and they went all over the world. We have kids in Australia and all over Europe and North America and South America. And we have them. And, like, when they got there, this fear that people have that if you don't have your child in a traditional form of education, what will they do in university? It was so opposite, the experience for our students. They got there. They got to Boston College or LSU or Pepperdine or wherever it was. And they walked in there and they realized, wait a minute, this is kind of like how we were doing it in high school. We set up our own schedule. We have to make our own goals. We don't have teachers holding our hands. There's a lot of self-direction. I understand who I am because I was always working with a mixed group. So I don't have to try to recreate some new identity. I actually am truly myself. And they find themselves, accustomed to having a voice in education. I think that's one of the things I always have loved about Montessori education is that these students grow to have a voice, but then for some reason, there's just this large group of people who think, well, yeah, that's great when they're little, but once they're older, they're going to need something else. And at Isla, we absolutely think it's the opposite in many ways. Like when our kids go through adolescence, we think more than ever they need to have one lead teacher that is with them all day, that care for them, to make sure that they understand how to handle that emotional roller coaster, that can focus on the skills that they're going to need to be, to feel confident and successful. And those skills are not necessarily all academic in nature. Some of them are, but many of them are about collaborating with others or having resiliency or being well organized. And I think, I think a lot of schools try to squeeze that in. But when you focus on it and when you allow people to feel that strength in those will create success in other areas, I think the results are clear. And so by being able to come in and tell those stories to the families, being able to provide a structure that kind of replicates the joy of the elementary school, but continues all the way up through to the high school, then it gives space for those micro schools as they're growing to stay there. I noticed another thing that I've noticed with a lot of micro school owners is just like I had said beginning, I don't think we're going to grow very big, but you have to grow. You don't grow, you end, right? Like the kids, they graduate. They either graduate and then you have to find new kids, or you do so well that more and more people want to come. And so if you're not prepared for the growth, then you get stuck. Yeah, it's cool during the pandemic to go tutor 10 kids and make a good amount of money and be able to provide this awesome service. But if you're really trying to leave your job in the school system, leave your benefits, leave your salary, and do this for a long period of time, you've got to be able to hold down for 10, 15 years. And you got to be able to let families feel confident that you can be around.
Right.
Yeah. But be around for the life cycle of their child's education. Right. I don't want to join a school at 4 and think that, when we get to 8th grade, we have to leave. I never wanted to be that.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned about Montessori. Both my kids were in Montessori. I'm very much a Montessori proponent. Even though it doesn't work 100% at home like that, it ended in kindergarten, and we were left having to figure out where to send them. A lot of Montessoris are very much, early education only. And you touched on so many things here. We're going to have you come back on another podcast, because I think there's so much more to really dissect, especially with with upper level education, with high school and all these things, because I think a lot of them, there's not enough touched on that, on how these principles that we have for early education should very much still be moving all the way through their education. But I think the goal here is really growing is inevitable when you're successful at what you're doing. Yes, staying small is really crucial for culture and community to stay consistent. But then, like you said, you have this affiliate program and you've got other locations. So it's not necessarily that you're building out one location to be massive. It's that we're building these little pods, these little groups within these smaller communities so that they can be relevant to that specific community. What's really helped it grow, what's helped it to sustain, is that you built the school around the community that it was in and what that specific community was needing, but also giving them the structure while the flexibility to learn what they needed to learn. And that gave the parents enough to trust that, okay, my kid's in a good spot. And yes, we have to abide by all these different rules, but we're still able to have the flexibility that the kids need so they can grow. And it's just a beautiful way to really do education, which is why we're reimagining everything that has to do with the educational model. And they'll have to read the chapter 2 to get more of the little snippets of what you've shared. And so I'm excited to get that to come out, but I'm really thankful that you've come on and given us such a wealth of knowledge. With your program, with everything that you've written out, where can they find you? Where, if they want to find out more about the offering that you've got, where do they need to go?
You can find us at islaacademy.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Isla Academy and Isla Academy Las Terrenas. Facebook, TikTok, all the other. And then my personal Instagram is _Sean_Bennett_.
Okay.
Almost as though it's under. Yeah, and always reach out. I mean, you know, the education is often seen as nobody wants to say it, but it's a child care service as well, even for teens. And the nature of work is changing so much, where the traditional 9 to 5, 5 day a week work experience is changing. The ability for people to work in different parts of the world, create small communities around whatever they want to build, and be able to have a great lifestyle. So I think it needs education. It needs innovative approaches to come forward to allow for the infrastructure of these small towns. Nobody wants to
Yes.
move, even if it's the most beautiful, idyllic location on the planet, to a place where they can't access, healthcare, food, and education. And so there
Yes.
is a way to do it in education.
Amen to that. We're dealing with some of that even in our
Yeah.
rural town. People don't have, well, mindset is a totally different conversation we'll have to have. But yes, the way that we think about education has to change. And I think with the micro
Oh,
school
yeah.
movement, it is definitely happening. We will definitely have you back on again for sure. And it's been such a pleasure, Sean. Thanks so much for joining.
Appreciate you.
Yes. Happy homeschooling, everyone. Take care. Thanks so much for joining me on the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast. Before you go, though, don't miss out. Check those show notes down below so you can get those exclusive freebies and helpful resources and some practical tips that we've been sharing to support your homeschool journey. If you found value in today's episode, which I'm sure you have, please, please, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, share it with another parent who needs it. The more reviews and comments that we get, the more parents we can reach with the support they need. And so your next step towards confident homeschooling is literally just a click away. Just check below. So just check out those notes and we'll see you next time.